Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm very excited to be here. It's such a blessing to come and just spend time with you all and discuss a very important question. I think we can all agree, if he is alive, that changes everything. It's a game changer, right? It means, one, death doesn't have to be the end, right? That's what that means. And secondly, it means the same man we read about is alive. The man that performed miracles with his Father's power and showed compassion to sinners and said, you know, we're all sinners, but let's learn about my Father. And he's alive. That changes everything. So it's a good question, I think, to start. And I'm excited for, like Ray said, 6 weeks. Unfortunately, I will be not here for the next 5 weeks. But as we continue on our discussion and journey, we're going to ask, what is he doing? What has he been doing for 2,000 years? You know, and I think that's recently, my life has changed dramatically since I started to ask that question. What is he doing? And that's why I'm excited to be here. And a little bit about myself. For 10 years, I was in a show in New York City called Stomp, where we make music out of junk, like garbage cans and wooden poles and basketballs. And it was an amazing time, but I was caught up kind of in the party lifestyle in New York City, and I found out very quickly that kind of lifestyle is very quick. I mean, it's just temporary happiness. And that's what led me to quit my job. I quit the show, and now that's why I'm here. I want to spend the rest of my life talking about this very important subject. Is Jesus alive? And like I said, it's a game changer. So hopefully, those that do believe that he's alive, hopefully this will strengthen our faith. Hopefully those that are young and thinking about things, hopefully this will make us ask questions. And hopefully for those that are undecided, hopefully it will also encourage us to look into this question. So, last night we saw a movie. I think everyone saw it except you and you. So I'll show you a trailer of what we saw last night.
It's somebody into an investigation into Christianity. What would you start? If the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen, the house of cards. You sure you want to give me that load again? I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger. I spent my entire career as a journalist covering the truth until the day my wife presented me the biggest story of my life. I'm going to lose my wife and my kids to something that I can't even reason. What happened next changed me forever. How can we even talk about historical evidence for the resurrection? The Gospels are filled with contradiction. The empty tomb is based on evidence. And isn't evidence your trade? We all bet our lives on something. The question is, what's it going to be?
As much as I would like to help out fellow skeptics, what you propose here is impossible.
Jesus survived being spiked to the cross.
There's no evidence of anyone ever surviving a full-on crucifixion.
Just because I write something down, I bury it in dirt. That doesn't make it true.
But I thought there's something more real than anything I've ever known in my life.
I'm praying for you.
You really want to know the truth, or does your mind want to be made up?
I'm blaming me and the church and God. And do your job.
No one's ever broken is the shroud, is the actual burial cloth of the Christ. But Whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time, suddenly becomes a real person.
So I would encourage those that did not see it to order it on DVD, and also encourage those friends and family that maybe are on the fence, maybe they don't quite believe, to check out this movie, because I believe that it presents evidence, factual evidence. Hello. One question, actually a quote in the movie that I thought was really important was C.S. Lewis, who's a famous author, said this: Christianity, if false, is of no importance. And if true, of infinite importance. So basically, if Christianity is true, it is the most important thing in the universe. The only thing that it cannot be is moderately important. Right? Christianity, it can't be, it's sort of important. It's either it means nothing or it means everything. Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote that if Christ did not raise, it's pointless. Like, I would not be here, basically. We're wasting our time. So it's a very important question. We have 4 E's I like to talk about. This is, if we're talking to friends that maybe don't believe, 4 E's. First, we have to have an execution, right? If there's no execution, if he wasn't killed, there's no resurrection, right? And it's very interesting. There's no dispute. There's no dispute in the field that he was executed, right? Historians, non-religious historians, non-Christians agree that he was executed, right? In ancient history, we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 sources to confirm a fact, right? In ancient history, we're lucky. Not only do we have multiple historical reports from the 1st century that make up the New Testament, but there are 5 ancient sources outside of the Bible confirming Jesus' execution. Right? There's 5 ancient historical sources, not in the Bible, that confirm that Jesus was executed. Right? We have Josephus, who was the 1st century Jewish historian that worked for the Romans. We have Tacitus, he was an early historian. We have Lucian. We have Mara bar Serapion, and even the Jewish Talmud, the ancient Jewish book, claims that Jesus was executed. Right? These are 5 non-biblical historical records that claim that Jesus was executed. This is so well documented that you get laughed out of any major university, any major institution for saying it did not happen. You would get laughed out. Even extreme, like the extreme kind of opposite spectrum of, of spiritually speaking, an atheist New Testament scholar, right, a critical scholar, said this, Gary Luderman: Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable. This is an atheist, a critical New Testament scholar. He said, this is indisputable. So there's very few facts from ancient history that a skeptic would say are indisputable. Jesus' crucifixion was one of them. A second E, this is a good one. We have early accounts. We have early accounts or reports that Jesus rose from the dead. So first we have to have a crucifixion, right? And that's the majority of historians believe that that's a fact, but certainly that he rose from the dead, that's a legend, right? It's a legend. It's been passed down throughout the years. So it took a long time for legend to develop in the ancient world. Why do you think that is? Why did it take a very long time for legend to develop in the ancient world? Today it develops fast. Like you hear it quickly. Why do we think it took a long time?
They didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
Communication.
Yes.
They just had dialogue.
Dialogue. Yeah, it took a historian said it would take 100 to 150 years to 200 years for legend to develop. So, you know, it would take 200 years for, like I said, stories to develop, mythologies to circulate, for legends to develop. But thankfully, we have this creed, right? This statement from the earliest Christians. They would gather around this creed based on facts that they knew to be true. And thankfully, the Apostle Paul preserves this creed for us. If we can turn our Bibles to the letter of 1 Corinthians. Have the Bible on your phone yet? You gotta get YouVersion. The YouVersion app is so good. Sure. 1 Corinthians. So we have Acts, Romans, and then 1 Corinthians. If you can turn to the chapter 15, please. Now, historically, we know that 1 Corinthians was written 54 to 55 AD. Okay? This letter we're about to read was written 54 to 55 AD. Jesus was executed most likely in 30 AD. So this letter we're about to read, it was written within 25 years. That is historically just absolutely incredible. 25 years from the death of Jesus. And this is this creed that Paul wrote about. If we can start at verse 3. Can you read verse 3? 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 3.
For I delivered to you as of first importance, what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures.
Okay, thanks. So he says, I received this, right? He received this beforehand, right? Verse 4, can you read verse 4?
That he was buried, and he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures.
Verse 5, please.
And then he was seen of Cephas and of the 12. After that, he was seen of about 500 prisoners at once, of whom the greater part remained unto this prison, but some have fallen asleep.
Verse 7, Jonathan.
After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles.
Verse 8.
Last of all, as one to untimely born, he appeared also to me.
Thank you. So historically, this is very impressive. That 25 years after his death, the first two biographies of Alexander the Great by Arrian of Plutarch were written 400 years after Alexander. And they are generally considered reliable. So 25 years after Jesus' death, Paul is writing this letter. And he says, I've already given this to you. I've already passed this on to you. So we can go back even earlier. Paul had been Saul of Tarsus, right? This man that wrote this letter, he was a hater, a persecutor of Christians. People that said Jesus is alive, he was persecuting them, right? But then one day, within 1 to 3 years after Jesus' death, he experiences the risen Jesus, the risen Christ, and his life changes. And he becomes the Apostle Paul, and he immediately goes into Damascus to meet with apostles. And there's some scholars that say that this is most likely when he was given this creed. But most scholars say that no, it was 3 years later when Paul went to Jerusalem, and he met for 2 weeks with two people specifically mentioned in this creed, Peter and James. And the Greek word Paul uses to describe this meeting in Galatians 1 is hysteresis, which is an investigative inquiry, right? They were meeting, they were discussing, what did you see? Who did you see? So whether it was right away in Damascus or 3 years later, we know that within 1 to 6 years, after Jesus' death, this creed was in existence. So between 34 and 36 AD. Therefore, the eyewitness accounts that make up this creed go back even further, basically to the cross itself. The point is, there is no huge time gap from the death of Jesus to some legend that he rose from the death, right? It's like a news flash. It's like a news flash that goes right back to the cross, to the beginning. This is historic gold. So, follow me. We have execution. We have early accounts. These are two historically proven things. So we can't write them off as legends. We cannot write these early accounts off. It's a legend that formed. We have Matthew, we have Mark, we have Luke, John, we have Acts, we have Paul's writings, and these writings were circulating during the time of Jesus' contemporaries, who would be more than happy to point out the errors if these people were making this up. Third E, we have empty tomb. We have a historian who said this tradition, this creed, we can be entirely confident was formulated as tradition, as a creed within months of Jesus' death. It's the historian James D.G. Dunn. We have an empty tomb. Historical records show that Jesus was buried in a tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea. There are good, independent historical reasons for believing that this is true. This tomb was sealed. Matthew tells us it was guarded. There was guards outside the tomb. I mean, you can imagine these very powerful leaders. Once they killed Jesus, he has to stay in the tomb. They guarded him. I mean, sealed the tomb. He's dead. He's dead. The last thing they needed was an empty tomb and people saying, he's alive and he's going to come back to earth and be king. That's the last thing they needed. So, yet, there was an empty tomb found on the third day. And I could spend 6 weeks literally talking about the evidence of the empty tomb, but just briefly, I want to talk about 3 things. We have the Jerusalem factor, okay? The site of Jesus' empty tomb was known to Christians and non-Christians. If it were not empty, it would have been impossible for this movement of a resurrected Jesus, to explode in the existence of the very same city. It's what many historians say this. This is the city that they found an empty tomb. It'd be impossible for this movement to explode in the same city. This is interesting. It's called the criterion of embarrassment. So, if I'm going to write something, I do not want to say anything that's embarrassing. Right? Like writers, stay away from that. So we know that in the first century Jewish and Roman culture, this is cool, follow me here, testimony of women was not considered credible. They were not considered reliable sources of information. They were generally not allowed to testify in the court of law. And the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud says this: any evidence which a woman gives is not valid to offer. Josephus, a historian, said this: but let not the testimony of women be admitted. The last thing you would write, if you want people to believe you, is that women found the tomb. Women were the first people to see Jesus. It would go against what you're trying to say. And actually, people did in the 2nd century said it's not true because women saw it. It actually went against their case, so they would never, ever say women were the first people to see it unless it was true, and they wanted to present the facts. So I know this is a review for some of us from last night in the movie, just to kind of keep our mind on some of this evidence. So the position of history, actually there's one more, enemy attestation, or attestation, the enemies of Jesus, the enemies, they said it's empty, right? the best thing they could say was like, the disciples, they stole the body. They stole the body. So it's basically, they said it's empty. It's empty. We have no idea where his body is. So the position of history has never been whether or not the tomb is empty. The question is, how? How is it empty? We have an empty tomb. How? That's the question. Jewish authorities would never steal it because they wanted him to stay dead. The disciples wouldn't steal it because they would live lives of deprivation and suffering. This is important, 7 ancient sources inside and outside the New Testament confirming the disciples lived lives of deprivation and suffering after they said he's alive. The best explanation for that is that the tomb really was empty. All right, how are we doing? Staying with me? Are we awake? We have a 4th E. We have eyewitnesses. We have more than 515 eyewitnesses. Skeptics, doubters, believers, women, groups, indoors, outdoors. People said they touched him. They ate with him. They spent time with him. We have 9, like I said, we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 ancient historical records to prove a fact. And we have 9 ancient sources inside and outside the New Testament confirming the disciples' conviction of the risen Christ. It's an avalanche of historical data. Just want to show you what it might have been like. All right, bear with me.
Probably off. Turn the power on.
So those of us that have read these accounts will notice the differences. This is from a TV show called AD, The Bible Continues. Some differences from the text. But I think this might give an idea of what it was like. The disciples were scared. Romans, this is the biggest manhunt in the history of the world. We have to find Jesus. Go. People are probably digging up dead bodies. I mean, you have to find him. We have to find him. This is what it might have been like. Sorry. So this is from a movie called Risen. This is not biblical, but this might have been what it was like.
He's gone. Of course, the Nazarene. His tomb is stone empty.
We'll just use the drugs.
Your guards are missing. Some simpleton reported it. Who did you put on the detail? I want them found and lashed to death, preferably.
I mean, this way.
Kaya.
It's okay. So, has anyone seen Risen? Okay. It's a movie that follows a skeptic, a Roman soldier that was put on duty. He had to be the one to find Jesus' dead body. So, like I said, biggest manhunt. Can you imagine? The tomb is empty. Stanley, go. Everyone, anyone that was powerful, go. Go here, go. We gotta find him. Is that? It's okay. We have any questions so far? Good. In the meantime, can we turn up John chapter 20. Let's read. So it'd be good to read this first, so then we can watch the film and see the inconsistencies with the movie. It's always good to get the facts from the Bible. Can we start at verse 11? Chapter 20, verse 11.
And Mary stood beside him, secretly weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre.
And seeth two angels in white, sitting the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain.
Verse 13, please.
They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him."
So, thank you. So chapter 20, John 20, verse 14. There you go, thank you.
When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus.
Thank you. Verse 15, please.
Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener. She said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away."
Verse 16.
Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher.
Thank you. We'll stop there. So yeah, this author would never, John would never write Mary. Mary was the first one to see him. But first, I want to show this video of what it might have been like after Jesus' empty tomb was found.
He's gone. The Nazarene, of course, the Nazarene. His tomb is stone empty. All this news, the guards. Your guards are missing. Some simpleton reported it. Who did you put on the detail? I want them found and lashed to death, preferably. Let me investigate. Before Caiaphas and his pack of raving Jews show up here. Too late.
Shall we dispense with lies? The guards have told me.
They came to you, seeking sanctuary. I know the fellows were sleeping on duty. What happened? Exactly.
The heretic's disciples came in the night and stole the body. Already they have proclaimed it risen from death.
Will the people believe it?
We will. Others want to. So we must announce the theft.
Will they believe you?
They'll believe the guards. If you don't kill them first.
Endless.
Proclaim it. Before this blossoms.
It's not enough. Without a corpse to prove him dead, we have a potential Messiah. I want no doubt. Tiberius cannot arrive to unrest. We must find a body. Will you help?
Of course. But proclaim it.
My confidence in you misplaced, Tribune. Perhaps you prefer a post in hell. You will track down each and every one of these disciples, but more importantly, you will find the corpse of this cursed Yeshua. Bring the Elsea in. Has it been passed?
Dennis.
Where has he gone? You tell me. Come on, how's it going? We have no time. We disrupt him and learn. That's what you say. Sweat and herbs, bring it.
Well, nothing touched here. Close the watch. And everything leaving Jerusalem searched. Arrest anyone claiming the Nazarene lives and find out what they're going to do. And comb the city for bodies dead in the last week. Examine each for marks of the crucified.
Pick him up. Everyone. Bring him to the Nazarene.
Manhunt ensues. Let's turn to Luke chapter 24, please. Luke 24, can we start at verse 36, please? I'll start with you, Jennifer. Luke 24, verse 36.
While they were telling these things, he himself stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be to you."
Verse 37. Okay, it's okay. 37.
But they were startled and frightened and thought they saw a spirit.
38. Can you read Stanley?
And he said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do you doubt? And why doubt arise in your hearts?
Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have."
Verse 40.
When he had thus spoken, he showed them his hands and his feet. Even though they were still the joy and astonishment, he exhausted in deep and infinite. And they gave him piece of boiled fish, and honeycomb. And he took it and ate before them.
And he said unto them, "These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me."
Then opened he their understanding, that they might understand the scriptures.
He told them, "This is what is written, that Christ will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day."
And that repentance and forgiveness of sins is to be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem.
You are witnesses of these things.
And behold, I am sending forth the promise of my Father upon you. But you are to stay in the city until you are clothed with power from on high.
Thank you.
I don't understand. How is this possible? We need him here. Who would go to such lengths to take his body?
Killing him wasn't enough there to wipe out all the truth.
But the shroud is folded.
I don't know who could.
Why bring the Roman seal?
I don't know.
It is the third day. Do you dare to believe?
What did you find?
Nothing before nothing. And everything.
Why are you crying?
Have you taken him?
Who?
Have you taken him? Please. Tell me where. And I will get him.
Mary.
We found the rock, rolled back. The Roman seal, broken. If Pilate thinks we're responsible, why would he? Who else would take that kind of risk to get his body back?
John believes Isaiah's prophecy explains what's happened.
The prophet foretold that the Messiah would be led like a lamb to slaughter.
Here, for our transgressions, died beside the wicked and be laid to rest with the rich. John.
The last 3 days I've seen all these things. But do you believe he has risen from the dead?
It's what he promised would happen.
The Emperor's seal is broken. Do we stay or go?
Romans.
We need to leave.
Wait. We need to calm down.
We cannot rule out the tombs opened and emptied by the authorities to flush us out and round us up.
I saw him. Jesus. He spoke to me as clearly as I'm speaking to you now. Mary. He's alive. He stood before me and spoke my name.
Can it be true? What do you think, Peter?
I think I feel pain at his absence. Great guilt.
because I wasn't moving with the end. Shame. I so want to tell him I'm sorry. Peace be with you. Can't you believe your own eyes? Do you think you're looking at a ghost? What ghost carries flesh and bones? Is there any food? Yes. 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 This is what I told you while I was with you. Everything written about me in the laws of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Thomas! You won't believe the journey I made to get back. I was convinced I was being followed. Then I became confused and couldn't remember which was the right street or the right house. It was over when I saw... What? Jesus? I know. No. Thomas? He was here. What? Jesus was just here, in this room. He broke bread with us. Are you playing a sick joke on me because I'm the last to get back? No. So Jesus was here with you all? Yes. What kind of fool do you take me for that I would believe a story like that without proof? What kind of opinion must you have of me to believe I'd be so easily duped? It's the truth. I haven't slept for 2 nights. I've barely eaten. It was all I could do to come back and talk to Thomas. Stop this now!
Go to the tomb and see for yourself. See with your own eyes.
Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger in them. Unless I put my hand in the spear wound itself, I will not believe.
You think he's dead? And this is finished?
What else?
The truth.
Mary.
Go to the tomb.
Thanks for watching. It just makes it come to life a little bit. Like I mentioned earlier, we have nine historical documents inside and outside the New Testament that talks about the disciples, that they went from fear to boldly proclaiming in Jerusalem, right? It's like going out in the streets of Champaign and say, he's alive. They went from being scared to boldly proclaiming that he was alive. And they were put in prison, and they were whipped, and even death. They said he's alive. We cannot lie. Let's read the account of Thomas quickly. Let's go turn to the book of John, please. Chapter 20. And it's amazing that it's interesting that they spent 3 years with him. They watched him perform miracles, and they saw him do things that defied logic. He said, I'm going to be killed, and I'm going to rise from death. And even when they saw him, they had trouble believing it. He said, you think you're looking at a ghost? Thomas says, no, unless I touch him, I won't believe. Let's read that. John chapter 20, starting at verse 24. I will read. Now Thomas, one of the 12, verse 24, chapter 20 of John, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see his hands, the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe. 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came in and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Verse 27, then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe. Thomas answered him, my Lord and my God. Jesus said to him, have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Thomas was thanking God that he raised Jesus from death. Let's watch that.
We sealed the tomb. Why would they do that? To pretend his body remains inside. Kill any rumors that he's risen. Now do you believe, Thomas? We saw him. Each one of us touched him, sat with him, ate with him, laughed with him, but I did not. How can each of us be mistaken in exactly the same way at exactly the same time? Thomas. Now that you have seen for yourself, you believe. Blessed are they who have not seen me and still believe.
If you remember the movie last night, true story about Lee Strobel. He visited a psychiatrist and said, what are the odds of 500 people hallucinating, right? They were seeing things. She said, that's impossible. Hallucinations are one person's hallucination and dream. It's impossible for 2 people to have the same hallucination. So as in the movie, she said that would be a bigger miracle than the resurrection itself. So, almost done. Just in closing, for today, I'd like to just share a couple, like a website that I found is very helpful. It's called Questions from Atheists. And I think it's really thought-provoking material. If we have questions or we have friends that have questions, questionsfromatheists.com. And they have really, really cool videos. I'll show one video. Oops. So this is we just read the account where Jesus said, "This was what I told you would happen. Everything written about me, Moses and the prophets wrote that this would happen. That Messiah would be wounded and die for us, and they didn't quite understand." This kind of helps me understand a little bit about the prophecies that were written before Jesus was born, right? In the first half of the Bible, prophecies were written about Jesus, about the Messiah, someone that would come to save people, to help people, to heal people. And it talks about Jesus being divine. And what I believe that means is that he had power from God. God gave him power. He was just like us, human, but he had power from God. Because could only come from a divine, the one true God. So this is cool. So this is some questions from atheists. Check this out.
The chances that two people will have the same fingerprint is about 1 in 64 billion. That's why fingerprints are used in criminal cases, because they are considered near certain proof. What if it was possible to be that certain about Jesus? What would qualify as proof of Jesus' divine nature? If there were prophecies that were accurate, specific, written before the events happened, which couldn't be fulfilled on purpose, and less likely to happen than a 1 chance in 64 billion, then the case for the divine nature of Jesus could be called proven by modern legal standards. For your consideration, I give you Exhibit 1. The Messiah would be a descendant of Abraham. Deuteronomy 18:18, written in the 600s BC.
600 years before Jesus was born.
Population estimates, any random person has less than a 1 in 350 chance of being the right race to fulfill this prophecy. Number 2, the Messiah would be from the tribe of Judah. That's Genesis 49:10, which was written in the 900s BC. And the Messiah would be a descendant of David. That's 2 Samuel 7:12, written in the 500s BC. The odds that any given descendant of Abraham could fulfill this prophecy is about a 1 in 10 chance. Number 3, the Messiah would arrive while the temple was still standing. That's in Malachi 3:1, written in the 400s. And the Messiah would be revealed by 33 AD. That's in Daniel 9 and written in the 500s. Any person who has lived since then had a 1 in 16 chance of being born close enough to his death. Number 4, the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. That's Micah 5:2, written in the 700s BC. There was a 1 in 3,968 chance of a Roman-era Jew being born in the right place to fulfill this prophecy. Number 5, the Messiah would be wounded and pierced before his death and would be assigned a grave with criminals. That's Isaiah 53:5-9, written in the 700s BC. That has a 1 in 306 chance of being randomly fulfilled. Virtually all credible religious, agnostic, or atheist experts of history agree that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, a descendant of Abraham, Judah, and David, was alive during the Second Temple period, was hailed as Messiah by the crowd in 33 AD, was wounded and pierced before his death, and was assigned a grave with criminals. Historians also agree that the verses that predict these things were written down hundreds of years before Jesus' life. Calculated together, the probability of all these predictions being randomly fulfilled in one person is about a 1 in 68 billion chance. That means it's slightly less likely than two people having the same fingerprint, which is estimated at a 1 in 64 billion chance. So, if you trust a fingerprint as proof, you should trust Jesus too. To see how these probabilities in this video were calculated, and much more, go to questionsfromatheist.com.
700 years before Jesus was born, Malachi said the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem was a small town. Yeah, smaller than Champaign. I think it was at that time. There was a 1 in 3,968 chance of a Roman-era Jew being born in Bethlehem. I love that. And just to point out, virtually all credible agnostic and atheist experts of history agree Jesus was born in Bethlehem. There's no disputing that. He was a descendant of Abraham, Judah, and David. He was alive during the Second Temple period. He was hailed by the crowd as Messiah, was wounded and pierced before his death, right? They agreed in the execution and was assigned a grave with criminals. Historians also agree that these verses predicted this were written down hundreds of years, sometimes 900 years before Jesus was born. Questions from atheists. And this for me this is great evidence. The gospel writers could have spared their lives by ceasing to talk about Jesus. Instead, they became willing martyrs. Willing martyrs to prove that the gospels are authentic and trustworthy. Thank you for your attention. Next week, we are going to talk about Saul of Tarsus, a man who was persecuting Christians. If you said Jesus is alive, he would put you in prison and even have you killed. You could not say Jesus is alive. You couldn't say it. But people said, he's alive. I can't lie. I cannot lie. He's alive. We're going to talk about Saul of Tarsus next week. Thank you. Let's close in prayer. Our great God in heaven, we thank you so much for this time to look into your word and to discuss historians that have also looked into your word and into your power and into your son's resurrection. We pray that we may learn something tonight and just be with us, keep us safe as we leave here, and just continue to be with our thoughts and strengthen us and into a relationship with you and into your son. We pray for this through your son, Jesus' name. Amen.